Let's go first to President Joe Biden, Bite 24. This is specifically about what he responded to when he said, when the protests were happening, or this was just a couple days ago, he said this. Here is what he called for. This is Bite 24, Joe Biden.
We call on the government of Cuba to refrain from violence, their attempts to silence the voice of the people of Cuba.
Yeah, so he wants to make sure that we call on the government of Cuba to refrain from violence, to silence the people. Doesn't call for change, Will, as you brought up.
Right. Yeah, you would hope that maybe he'd call on the government of Cuba to change their oppressive regime, or maybe actually allow freedom on their country, or call for the internet to be opened up.
Yeah.
But instead he's just like, okay, let's keep the status quo. Just could you back off on the violence angle, please?
Yeah, and then on the converse, we have Pitbull, Mr. Worldwide, a Cuban-American from Miami. You've seen him. I know you love him. He made a great statement. So we just heard from Joe Biden, who said, we hope the government just, doesn't hurt their people. That's what we're hoping for. We're calling for the government to refrain from violence against their own people. But then here's what Pitbull has to say, Bite 33.
So to everybody out there, stand up, step up, and if you don't understand, get with the program and wake up. Because this is about freedom and it's about human rights. And to everybody in Cuba, keep the fight up.
Yeah, then he goes into a moment in Spanish. That is a declarative statement, something that sounds like should be coming from our government, but it's coming from our entertainers. It's coming from Pitbull, because as Rick said, this is an issue people who are from South Florida have been dealing with. It's gone beyond South Florida, but if you are from that area of the world, you've been dealing with this your whole life.
Yeah, I mean, I wish the president would listen to Pitbull and use some of that same rhetoric. For the president to talk about, the government, not being violent and to let the people have freedom of speech. Here's a newsflash to Mr. President. There is no right of free speech on the island of Cuba.
Right.
It does not exist. And then Bernie Sanders says, his hope is that the Cuban government will tolerate, that's the word he used, tolerate the demonstrators. Are you kidding me? Yeah. That's the best you can do. Of course, he is a socialist, and Cuba's a socialist nation. But he wants
the best hope is no violence or no violence against your own people.
Yeah.
And tolerance. Again, not change.
And respect their right to free speech, which, by the way, they don't have.
Another problem with this is that because of the slow reaction from the administration, they've ended up having to play defense from members of their own party who are saying, the real problem is the United States because of the embargo, that people like AOC and Bernie Sanders are blaming the United States on the problems of the Cuban people, not the oppressive communist regime. And so much so that Jen Psaki had to respond to those statements about, what are your thoughts on AOC saying that it's the embargo, with Bite 25.
These are protests inspired by the harsh reality of everyday life in Cuba, not people in another country.
So she's having to say it's not another country's fault. It's not that
having to separate
a little. It's because it's what the harsh everyday realities in Cuba, but they aren't strong with their language calling out what's going on.